We shall start from the line that begins with Onoroim on page Yud and top section, and it's actually 7 lines from the bottom. We've gone through this already, but I want to clarify certain points. We talk about oisiyos, and the reason we talk about oisiyos is that we want to understand the principle of keilim. Whatever we said about keilim, and we're using oisiyos to illustrate the point. And the first principle we're saying that every seichel has oisiyos through which it can be expressed, in which it can be mislabish. And we explained earlier, mislabish means it can be fully imbued in this oisiyos. And the other, and then even so, these oisiyos do not originate from the seichel. They're not created by the seichel. Because if it were so, then every seichel would have its own set of oisiyos. And that's not the case. Interchangeably among, for all the seichel. And this is where we have to go. On the reim she'ein. We see that this is not so. That the oisiyos differ. There are different oisiyos for different seichel. Pardon me. These oisiyos are interchangeably used for different seichel. They're not unique oisiyos for every seichel. Therefore, we conclude, Elo, they must say, she'ein ha'oisiyos min ha'seichel. It means that the oisiyos are not from the seichel. They did not originate in the seichel. And yet, on the other hand, we know that it is a seichel that reveals and brings out the oisiyos. What then is this? How then do we define that relationship? Rak only shaboyim alidei haseichel. They come as a result and through the seichel. So this morning, in reflecting on this, I realized that there is a very clear way of explaining these words, shaboyim alidei haseichel. And we'll go down just one notch and speak about a similar inyan at a different level. We said many times that a person does not walk, a person goes. In other words, the movement of his feet is inspired by the seichel that motivates a person to go someplace. He does not merely move his legs when walking. Walking is not a particularly human experience. On the other hand, a person does walk. And how does the phenomenon of walking get created? It gets created by the principle of going. He has to go someplace. And this is what motivates the walking activity. The walking activity is much lower, is much further out from the spirit of a human spirit. But what reveals it? The fact that he has to go someplace. This is the similar inyan. We say that the oisiyos come through the seichel, although they're not inherently created by the seichel. Because it's a seichel that one wants to express, therefore oisiyos are revealed as to how to how to express the seichel. So it comes out of the seichel, but it's not originating from the seichel.
So, and the mashal was he wants to get somewhere, so that he uses his feet.
Then he uses his feet. This actually motivates the movement of the feet.
But the feet are there regardless of whether
the feet are there, feet are independent. But they're activated. The inspiration for them, and the whole idea of walking comes from the fact that he has to get someplace. I always quote from Pasuk. The Pasuk says that Yankee, when he was fleeing from Esau, and then he slept over in Beis, and then he had this phenomenal dream, and Hashem said to him, "I'm going with you." Then it says, what says after that? I used Yankiv Raglov. Yankiv picked up his feet. The feet have to pick you up. How you pick up your feet? So Rashi says, at this point when he was so confident and so reassured, so then his spirit picked up his feet.
Which we're saying is always the case.
We're saying it's always the case at some level. Because if not for that, he would be dragging your feet. You see people dragging feet? I did.
So Seichel is the motivator and Oisius are the feet.
Oisius are the
feet.
I'm sorry.
The feet.
The feet, yeah. The carriers.
So the feet are the keilim for the motivation. They hold the motivation, so to speak.
That's right. That's right. They express it. They bring it, enable it to come out. And therefore, now we come back to the principle of that discussion, that the similar inyan Hisavus ha'oir is the principle of Hisavus ha'oir that we said from the thickening of the oir, Shehu bechinas hagbala shabbat, which is the aspect of hagbala, the aspect of limitation and boundary, inherent in the oir, she'alidei reshimu, that comes as a result of the reshimu. Here we can now put some so to speak, perspective on this. Just as in our moshel of the Oisi HaSeichel, or on the moshel of the walking, the spirit of going is a much superior spirit. It's part of the human soul that he has to. He and we said many times that he relates to the entire reality, and therefore he has to go. He can relate to every place. He has to go. But being that, which means covering ground, therefore there is the inyan that of walking, of oasis. Because to cover ground on a physical arena, you have to cover ground step by step. Thus, this reveals and expresses the limitation, the inherent pieces that compose this sefer, of this idea of going there, of being there.
How does that have to do with the concept of thickening?
This is the thickening of the oil. The oil, we said many times, what actually connects a person from one place to the other? It's a reality. Yesterday we used the example that everybody can relate to of being in 770. And we said, when you were in 770, is there any particular place where you're not? Why is it that when you're in 770 you feel that you're all over the 770? The reason for that is that everyone feels that they belong to 770. They're not strangers there. This is one of the Rebbe's profound effects. But the Rebbe didn't allow anyone to be excluded.
What was that? You didn't what?
Didn't allow anyone to be excluded. People would come to see the Rebbe in all kinds of garments and all kinds of. They would say l'chaim l'bracha to the goyim. Nobody doesn't belong there. So therefore, I'm here not because I grabbed this spot. I'm here because I'm allowed to be here. If I'm allowed to be here, I'm allowed to be all over.
That's the orb aspect of it.
That's
the
the
thickening would be that he's occupying a particular place.
That's it. That's the case. From this comes the case. V'shorsham ho'amiti shel hakeilim. Thus, shorsham ho'amiti, the true root of the keilim. This isn't that they come to the seichel. This is only that they come to the seichel. They are revealed to the seichel, they're formulated to the seichel. But what is the real root that gives a basis, a presence for keilim? This is hu meharshim. It is actually from the reshimu. We discussed reshimu a little bit. I don't want to go too far. It's still going to come. The mitzvah shouldn't come up. The main thing is the reshimu is, as we said in the word reshimu means a trace. There is no oir, but there's a trace of it. There is some kind of reality inherent there. And therefore, the only way to relate to that reality is through some kind of a keilim. And the shorshim ho'amiti, the true root of the keilim, is from reshimu. Rak, except she'pa'ul as his havus, that the effect of it coming to be, the creation of it, hu al de hakav. It is through the kav, shehu bechinas hagil, which is the aspect of gil. The kav is the aspect of gil. What is gil? Gil means expression, presenting the presence. We'll revisit this. We already talked about the Gilui earlier. Meshum, and the reason that his havus bepoyel, the pure his havus, the effect of his havus is through the kav, which is in Gilui Meshum. It is because the whole his havus, that his havus, anything that is saying is coming into being, tzorich liyois al day his galus apel. His havus has to be al day his galus apel, by the expression of the poil of the action. What this means is simply the following. A carpenter is going to build a table. And the table, not only does he know what a table is and what the function of the table is, and what its origin and so forth, he understands the whole phenomenon. But he already has in his mind, so to speak, a full picture, a design of what table he's building. He cannot then go and build a table. He has to then break down the process of creating a table into little bits. In order to build a table, first of all, I have to get wood. To get wood, I have to go to the
hardware.
the hardware, what?
Lumberyard.
The lumber yard.
Lumberyard.
To unload and choose the wood, the proper wood, and so forth. And then you have to get all the various other supplies that you need: glue and nails and screws and tools. And I have to have a place where to set it up. All of these things have gone into building the table. Practically speaking, at the end, he has to fit in every piece of wood in a proper way, measure it appropriately, exactly the way it should be, fit it exactly to the place where it, and then finally put in the final nail. And without hitting the last bang, it's not going to be a table. He cannot deliver a kit of a table. That's not what he was hired. He was hired to deliver a final table. This is the Ayin, is Galus HaPoel. Galus HaPoel means that you have a full expression of the action of what you're doing. If you have the idea and you appreciate the idea, but you do not have the spirit to go ahead and bang in the nails, then something is missing. I really want to do mitzvahs, but I'm not interested in putting on tefillin. That you're motivated for that. Then you're not relating to the holy.
How is that related to today's Galus HaPoel?
Those are the poil.
The poil is the putting on the tefillin.
That's right. The focused action, the limited action. That's the gilu. That expresses the
This is
entire reality. Oh,
This was the clapping the hands and the dancing.
that's, yeah. The clapping the hands. Remember that? But even though that the pool is his house, the action and the bringing forth of his house is to the car, which is gil, but but essentially, what do they represent? What is the root element of the keilim? Who may reshimu? It is actually from the reshimu.
The appreciation you're talking about is also or. You're saying that there's in the process of the carpenter, for instance, you said that there's appreciation for it, which is where in that mashal is the just the keilim itself without the hisavos because
In the final action.
But that's with the or. That's with the or of the gav. What would it be without?
The oil, like we said, in order to get to this place, you have to walk. Walk means move one foot in front of the other and push it against the ground. And you will not be able to walk unless you have that overall oil where you want to go. But what is the true source of it? Shoshim hu amiti, the true source of the oasis, of the keilim. He is from the reshimu.
So the
One second.
Yeah.
Now that we are standing on this point, in this illustration, this platform, the reshimu would be represented by the fact that, in fact, even though, like you said, 770 is one big room, or this is it's one reality, there are multiple places there. This is the reshimu. And because of these multiple places, this is why there are the means by which to reach each one of these places and identify them. We've said many times that sight, like chokhmah, has this phenomenal combination. You see a huge expanse at an instant, literally an instant. How can you say in one instant see miles across? So we explained what the phenomenon, how that is, because you relate to the source of it, to the base of it, but nevertheless, the Pale Mamish, you see a whole expanse. This expanse, this is like the reshimu. This is like, it's actually composed of different pieces. Although you do not compile these pieces to represent the expanse. You see the entire reality at once. The oil has entire reality, but the oil illuminates the reshimu, the content. This is what enables one person to go from place to place and to identify different places, even though he saw everything in one glance.
He doesn't relate to it on the content level until he comes to it in the way of like oil.
What?
He doesn't relate to it in the way of its content, of its individual pieces until
that's right. Until the oil reveals it to him, and then he can see the individual pieces. And then relate to them. So, Reshimu means, as we said, like in this case of sight, really you see each at a glance, but not really. Really, this is a huge expanse, and every piece is a separate presence. B'shoyresh ha'oiros, and the root of the oiros, hu hein me'etzem hakav. The oiros are really me'etzem hakav, are from the kav itself. What is the kav? She'o b'chinas ha'gilu d'yonisov shelifnei ha'tzimtzum, which is the gilu of the yonisov that precedes the tzimtzum. Like we said, that what makes it possible? What is the phenomenon of sight? That you see a whole expanse in one instant. It is due to the fact that you see it from a different perspective, a different level, from a different position. You see it from the position of the reality itself. Not how the composition of all these little pieces. You see it from the perspective of reality. It's an interesting means of a kind of having a perspective on this.
Having a what?
A perspective on this. It's an interesting thing. A circle in physics, in geometry, is identified as the point, the central point. But a circle can be a huge circumference. How do you identify by the central point?
How do you?
What does it mean you identify?
Because it's
Wait a minute. How do you identify by the central point? It's a huge circumference.
As it relates to other things.
Huh?
As it relates to other things, as if it can be from that point.
All points are equidistant.
It is this point that provides for the entire circle. I see the whole circle, but what makes it into a circle? The fact that it relates it to a certain point. Every point relates to the same point. This is how can we see the circle? This is, in a sense, the similar principle. That the curve, this is relating to Ayin substitute tzimtzum. In fundamental truth, this is what provides the ability there to be things. This is what Rambam says. There's a motivation. This is what provides for things to be, ability for things to be. Everything is pointing to the same source.
How come we end up with a line with a curve, not a circle?
No. So the curve is in order to the circle is above that. The curve is in order to provide for say the Chassidus, for actual creation. This is after the tzimtzum. But before the tzimtzum, it's all one reality.
So it would seem that the or is deeper.
Huh?
The or is more fundamental than the reshimu.
The oil is more beginning. The root of the reshimu is separate. But in terms of how it manifests itself, in the reshimu there are pieces, in the oil there is no pieces. It's oil is in oil is only for sure. And how do we see a whole expanse at a glance? Because we're not looking at the expanse, we're looking at the base of this expanse. Just like in a circle, you look at this central point. What the whole thing is based on. I have to get my phone cleaned up. Okay, it's time to call it a day. Okay, so we interrupt now. Anyway, my phone is. Your phone is also protest.